All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know a few people that we're expecting aren't on yet, but we have a little bit of housekeeping and introductions to make here. Welcome all to the CartoPac webinar series for the spring of 2014. I'm Sam Harrison. I'm just going to touch very quickly on our upcoming webinars to let you all know about those. Of course, today we're talking about CartoPac Asset Manager, and I'll go more into that in a few minutes here. The next one, next Wednesday at the same time, is the CartoPac Windows tablet interface release, which is a chance to see the new CartoPac interface for Windows tablet that we've worked on, and optimized workflows for asset inventory, maintenance, and inspection, all from within one core application. The following Wednesday, on May 21st, we're going to be We're pleased to have Doug Ruppel of W&M Environmental Group coming in to talk about a CartoPac solution that they have written to take a look at spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plans. And then the following Wednesday, on May 28th, we're very pleased to announce a webinar detailing the New Century and CartoPac software pods collaboration. This is an end-to-end field-to-enterprise pod solution that we've created, and we're very excited to tell you about that. Today's webinar is going to focus on the CartoPac Asset Manager. There's a very exciting new addition to the CartoPac platform that takes CartoPac from field data collection and into process for your enterprise, delivering organizations a structured, traceable process to view, edit, validate, and approve field asset data as it moves from the field into the enterprise. Speaking today will be Jake Obdahl. If any of you have done much work with CartoPac, you probably know Jake. He's very central to our operations here and has a part in almost everything that we do. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. The webinar will be recorded today, so if there is anybody within your organization or outside of your organization that you think would benefit from being able to review this, by the end of the week it should be available through the same link you used in order to get into the registration today. We will have two polls during the webinar just to get a little feedback from you all about what parts of what we're showing you are important to you and what the drivers are that would make something like this useful to your organization. They are anonymous, so feel free to answer them in any way that you want. We won't be knowing exactly who gave which answers. So, in terms of questions, we're going to have a period at the end, about 15 minutes, to answer those. So go ahead and ask them during the webinar. You can type them into the questions box as shown in this graphic here. And we will sort through them and get them all answered at the very end. And so on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Jake. Jake?
All right, thank you, Sam. And thanks for everyone in attendance here today for this webinar. Hopefully we can provide a good overview on the CartoPac Asset Manager. And once again, we do invite you to attend our other upcoming webinars as well. A lot of good information we'll be sharing over the next several weeks. So before we jump into CartoPac Asset Manager, I know many of you attending here today are very familiar with the CartoPac platform as a whole, but some of you may be fairly new to the concepts and the offerings that CartoPac provide. So I wanted to provide a little bit of an overview, set the stage a little bit here to provide some context as far as where the CartoPac Asset Manager fits into the overall CartoPac platform. The CartoPac platform is a very focused set of tools that specializes around field asset management, both the field data collection, be it inventory, maintenance, inspections, as well as the integration of that data into your existing systems, and as you'll see here today with CartoPac Asset Manager, extending that beyond to provide structure and process around the management of that field data. What we have with CartoPac is very complete, and even more so now with the CartoPac Asset Manager, again with that focus around field data asset management. These tools, the goal here is to provide the highest productivity and the highest value across the spectrum here for those high priority field assets and the data collection and management of that information from field to finish. A lot of that is driven by the fact that the CartoPac platform is based on configuration. So we have a suite of tools out of the box, so to speak, that can be modified to meet particular workflows and needs and integrate with particular systems, but all of this is done through configuration. So that can really eliminate a lot of the typical costly development and maintenance costs associated with some similar offerings out there. Another key piece with the CartoPac platform is our integration with existing systems, be it our partner with Esri and integrating with the Esri ArcGIS platform, our hardware partners, and integrating with other systems, working with other partners as well to bring this cohesive platform together, not only to enhance the capabilities around asset collection, data collection, but then also tie this in to your other systems. Looking at some of the key pieces here, and we'll just review real quickly, most of the additional items we're not really going to cover here today, again with the focus on CartoPac Asset Manager. But there's some key pieces here that tie in, again, to the overall platform. CartoPac Mobile, of course, is the software utilized to collect that data in the field. This could be a ruggedized GPS device, such as the Trimble unit, for high accuracy GPS, GNSS data collection. Also can be the Windows 7, Windows 8 tablet, like you see in the graphic here. This is something we're seeing more and more drive for, having this tablet-based workflow. And in fact, we'll be focusing on that in next week's webinar, introducing our new Windows tablet interface, again, to optimize that tablet environment. Excuse me. Next is the CartoPac Studio. This is the configuration tool used to build out the forms, to configure these mobile forms for the CartoPac mobile environment, to really match a workflow, and at the same time really adhere to those back-end business rules around the database architecture and integrate this all together. And again, this is configuration-driven, not custom code, so a very powerful tool to provide these custom workflows as needed. The CartoPac server is a key piece, particularly from the enterprise perspective, and a foundational component for CartoPac Asset Manager. This web platform is really a field-focused environment to get data in and out of the field. So this is typically deployed with the ArcGIS server environment. You can see a graphic there of our out-of-the-box CartoPac server web application, again built on ArcGIS for server. And this provides that seamless integration between the field and the enterprise, a portal to move data in and out, upload and download, if you will. There's some additional core capabilities within CartoPac server, some key performance indicator reporting, some of the field project management tools, the ability to provide custom reporting capabilities, things of that nature, and then specifically what we'll be talking about here today with the CartoPac Asset Manager as an additional module, an additional software component built on top of the CartoPac server environment. So with that, we'll dive into today's focus around CartoPac Asset Manager. CartoPac Asset Manager, really, there's a concept here of this structured asset data integration, right? And again, keeping to the concept of the CartoPac platform being configurable, that's something that we'll see here today towards the end of the presentation. The configuration environment, because there are a number of different workflows that even within one organization might need to be addressed for review, validation, approval, rejection, this kind of QA, QC, and structured process behind the scenes. And that's really where CartoPac Asset Manager is focused. So, in looking at CartoPac Asset Manager, this graphic may do a good job of providing some initial kind of context here around what we'll be looking at here today. So for example, as data is collected in the field and then uploaded, you can see these circles representing different states of the data. And we're going to be talking a lot about states and transitions as some core concepts within CartoPac Asset Manager. So that information that was collected can move quickly through these different steps. And different stakeholders may have different responsibilities along the way. Simple concepts such as validation, but there may be other processes, both manual and automated along the way, such as geoprocessing. One example here would be the post-processing of that GPS data, the differential correction, automating that in a geoprocess within one of these states. There may be multiple tiers of approval process, multiple stakeholders involved with review and approval, responsibilities and capabilities, with the end goal of having this data move through the process to its final or complete state, typically loading to its final resting place, the system of record, if you will. So that may be within the GIS, that may be within a PODS environment, it may be in multiple databases, an EAM environment, but moving this data through these states to get it to where it is quote-unquote complete. Now in this graphic, it's a fairly linear view. And as we'll see here as we move through, CartoPac Asset Manager, the workflows that you can put in place typically aren't truly linear, right? Because there could be a rejection of that particular record and moving that back to another user. There could be vertical arrows here, and we'll see an example of this in a moment, where a yes or a no may drive which state that data then moves to. And so a little bit more about the states and transitions, if you will, because again, this is really the key. These are the key pieces that make up the workflow within CartoPac Asset Manager. So for any of you engineers out there, this concept of states is probably very familiar. This is the terminology we're using here for this particular software application, is that data can live in a state and it can move from state to state via a transition. And this will make up then the workflow for that back-end process of data. So we have an example here, and this particular example is what we've used for today's demonstration. It's a pretty simple flow chart, if you will, pretty simple workflow. For the purposes of demonstration, hopefully it does give you a good sense of what CartoPac Asset Manager really can do. Of course, this could be far more robust. It could even be simpler than this. But you can see here in the graphic we have the states represented as these boxes, and we can have both manual states and automatic states or automated states. The transitions as well that go along with those states can be manual or automated also. So what we'll see in today's demonstration is data comes from the field. It will go into this uploaded state. The field user may then submit that data, which would be the transition arrow here, and that would go into another state, in this case check for damage. So this is where that data is now in an automatic state, and dependent on an attribute criteria, which we're going to cover all of this here today, may move into a state of complete, in this case if no damage is found. If damage is detected, it would move into a damage detected state. Each one of these states may have different users with different responsibilities. The data may come into their queue to do some type of review, again maybe manual, maybe automated, where then it would then transition in this case from damage detected either to a repair review or confirm no repair is needed in this case. So this type of concept of this flow of data, this flow chart, hopefully starts to bring the concept a little clearer here as we walk through the demonstration. But before we get into the demonstration itself, I want to talk a little bit about what drove CartoPac to develop this particular product, to bring this offering to market. So we want to talk a little bit about some of the key drivers behind CartoPac Asset Manager. We'll start with some high-level concepts, and these bullets you see here today, you've probably seen a lot of these concepts, you're living a lot of these concepts in your organizations today. In particular, that first bullet stating regulatory compliance. Obviously, that is a key driver for organizations, particularly within oil and gas, where we put a lot of our focus and a lot of our clients operate. And the concept of traceable, verifiable, and complete, I'm sure rings true for most of you in attendance here today. So that's a big overarching driver for organizations to be able to have that data ensure that they can track, trace, verify every time that data was touched, and then get that to that complete state for their interfacing with auditors and regulators. Now, organizations, they've already got processes in place, right? This pressure, this regulatory pressure is nothing new. So companies are doing a lot around this already. But some of the feedback we're getting is while that may be the case, there are inefficient processes, and a lot of this is a manual process of QA/QC and of validation. And it may not be very standardized. It may be different from one business unit to the next within a corporation. It may be different within field operations from one manager to the next. The standardization component, another driver here to have a product that, while configurable to meet specific demands, is a standardized offering to really address some of these key components. Now, there are some applications out there or organizations may be utilizing some tools already, but they may be custom-built software applications, which can be very difficult and costly to maintain. This is something we're very well aware of here at CartoPac. In fact, the CartoPac Asset Manager was really born and created after some key concepts with custom software that we had put in place with one of our clients. So there was a need for these tools, and at the time we had built a very custom application to do so. It did the job very well, but over the years, as that grew, as things were modified and changed, it became more and more difficult to maintain all of that custom code sitting behind it there. So that was one of the key drivers, both from the client's perspective, but also a key driver for us in creating this application to have something much more of a standard, stable, maintainable offering. One last concept here to touch on at a high level is this idea of enterprise visibility. This is some feedback we've been getting as well, that while with more and more data coming in and more capability to use that data, whether it be in GIS or otherwise, there still is often a lack of visibility enterprise-wide. So key stakeholders may not be able to get to that data, may be too difficult to get to that data, but the visibility across the board is another key driver that's been introduced. So these are all great high-level concepts that we can talk about and buzzwords we can throw around, but we also wanted to provide some feedback that information we've received in our communication with industry, within the industry, with our clients. And so in talking to our clients, we got some feedback around some of the key drivers pushing for a back-end process like this. And so we've taken that information, paraphrased it a bit, and trimmed it down for the purposes of presentation. But this is actual feedback from folks within the industry. One statement was, "I collected all this data, now what?" So this is an interesting statement because in this particular case, we had done a really good job through implementing CartoPac in allowing this organization to collect data very efficiently and get that data into SDE very efficiently. And, a while back we might have said, well, great, pat ourselves on the back there. But even though all of that data has gotten into the system, there was a big, well, now what? I have all this data in here, but there's so much more that I need to do with it, and there are still unanswered processes here to be able to really leverage that information and, again, ensure that I can move the data through these different QA/QC processes and steps to ensure it is complete. Another statement read, "We need a documented, repeatable, structured process to integrate field data into the enterprise." Well, this is another similar concept to the previous statement here, but there's some key buzzwords in there that I'd like to touch on. Repeatable, documented, and a structured environment. Again, so many different manual processes that may vary out there. Something very repeatable here, not only so that this data is integrated at the enterprise level, but then that information can be communicated, regulators, auditors, and then throughout the organization as well. This next one here, it really hit where it hurts for this particular client. And as it stated, due to inability to inform on operational conditions observed in the field, we incurred very high fines. Solving this problem became a top priority at the executive level. So this is something very tangible, of course, where fines were being incurred here based on that inability to really inform on some of the conditions on these priority assets. And so this went all the way up to the top at the executive level to really try to find a way to address these key concerns. And finally, going back to that concept of enterprise visibility, this statement read, we need a common operating picture with quick access to key information to review with regulators. So there's a common theme throughout here, but we wanted to provide some of that feedback that we've heard. At this point in the presentation, I think is when we'll introduce our first poll, because we'd like to get some feedback from you to see if any of this rings true, if there are key drivers within your organization that are really pushing for something like CartoPac Asset Manager here today. So I'm going to let Sam bring up that poll, and if we can all take a moment here, it should be coming up. So you see the question listed, that what, if any, are the priority business drivers in your organization for a solution like CAM? So we'll take a moment here and let you fill that out. There may be key drivers that aren't listed here, and other probably doesn't do it justice, but if there's some key drivers that you'd like to express and share, that can also be put in through the questions panel. It's something we could also talk about towards the end here. But please take a moment, if you would, and fill out the poll that's listed there, and let's see if any of these ring true for your organization as well. I'll give you just a moment to do that.
Yeah, we'll take about another 10 seconds or so. I can see that votes are still coming in. So.
Okay.
All right, that's a majority. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll out. Let's see what the results were. All right, hopefully everybody can see this. So it looks like the top reason was regulatory compliance, with 78% of respondents choosing that one. Second was standardization. Third was common operating picture at 56%, and then enterprise visibility at 44%. Thanks all for participating in that. It's very useful.
Thank you, Sam. And yes, as Sam stated, thank you for your participation in that. And probably not a big surprise here that regulatory compliance is the key kind of overarching driver, if you will. And so hopefully as we move through the presentation here, we'll touch on some key areas that, again, may ring true for the work you're doing here within your organization today around trying to meet those different regulatory demands. Okay. So let's move on here, and let's take a look at the technology a bit. So we're going to look at kind of a day in the life, if you will, of CartoPac Asset Manager. And so we'll look here at the technology, and we've simplified this down, again, for purposes of time and just to get some core concepts across. But quick overview of this story, if you will, this particular example demonstration. This will be based on a pipeline inspection workflow. Very simplified in this case. There will be some multiple levels of review and approval. And again, we've streamlined that down here for the purposes of demonstration. But in all reality, we have organizations we work with that have many levels of review and approval, different touch points, if you will. We also know that there's a need for the configurable tools to meet these varying demands. We talked about that before, different workflows, not only from organization to organization, but within the organization. Everything from the as-built construction process all the way through to a maintenance from an operator's perspective, many different demands that would be in place here. If we kind of look at this from the different users' perspective, a tool like this needs to be simple and efficient. And from a field perspective, the mobile is a big piece there, but there's also feedback we've gotten about getting the data from the field to the enterprise. And one of the concepts that came out from a training a while back is this idea of a black box. That at the time, the field users felt they did all this work to collect the data, capturing GPS, attribute information. Hey, we did what you told us to do, and we send that data in, and it just goes into a black box. That's really the last we've seen of it. And there's a desire and a need from the field have some verification that that job is in fact complete. Now we'll go up the next level to say a field supervisor. The need to have, again, that single portal to review all of the different asset information that's coming in from the field, because there could be a lot of data coming in from a lot of sources. The ability to rapidly review and go through those required steps of QA/QC and approval, and have this in a structured, repeatable process to either accept or reject and move that data from A to B. Again, there may be multiple levels needed of approval or visibility on this data to ensure regulatory compliance and so on. It may be that as data moves through the system, high priority assets, for example, damage is found and repair is required on this priority asset, that information needs to move into the next level, to the next queue, and there needs to be visibility there. But that same concept of a structured process for acceptance and rejection as that moves through. But let's not forget the GIS and the IT perspective here. I'm guessing most all of you joining us here today probably come from the GIS/IT arena, right? So you're the ones who most likely will be managing the technology, implementing this, making the changes that are needed, making the technology fit the business needs, right? So it has to be configurable, need configurable tools to meet those drivers. And again, this concept of configuration versus development being key here. And need to integrate that with existing systems, in particular the GIS. You know, the GIS has become more and more powerful. We're seeing in some cases it's becoming the system of record, or at least very important in parallel to a PODS or a Maximo or an SAP environment. So these tools need to integrate with those systems, with those existing applications very well. Okay. Well, let's get into the story, if you will. And we're going to step through this from the field data capture to the upload of that data and submission from a field user's perspective, and then we'll see that go through one level here at the field supervisor review level. And then we'll also touch on the administration side. So we'll get under the hood, so to speak, to look at how one of these workflows can be configured to meet your particular needs. All right, we'll start with the field. We're going to use CartoPac Mobile, capture both location information and some key attributions on that inspection, and then we're going to upload that data through CartoPac Server. Again, review field needs it to be efficient, simple upload into that enterprise system. So let's take a look. So we're looking here at CartoPac Mobile. In this case, this is the current CartoPac Mobile tablet interface. Maybe familiar with that. We're going to collect an inspection in this case. This is a refined workflow where that's all that this user will do. Digitizing it in since we don't have GPS on inside. And we'll fill out the forms here, again, highly configurable to meet those particular needs. In this case, buried line was exposed, and the field has found an issue and says repair is required. Key piece here, we're checking that damage observed box, and that's going to come into play here as we move through this example. So field user fills out the information. You can see a lot of information has automatically been captured. Again, we're not focusing on the mobile here. We've captured what we need. There it is on our map. We captured the location information and the key attribution for this particular inspection. So user's going to save their data, and we'll move on to the next step. So we're done in the field. We're ready to upload that data. So the field user is going to upload that into the system. And in this case, the field user has the need to perform additional tasks outside of what they did in the field. And they'll do that via CAM, CartoPac Asset Manager. Finally, they'll submit that data for supervisor review. The field needs, again, we need verification that job is complete, no black box. And that ability for additional data interaction. Now, in many cases, many of our CartoPac solutions, our deployments, the field data collection is performed. The field user clicks upload that goes into the appropriate SDE feature classes and or other tables within other databases. Perhaps their job is done. The line is drawn there. And that's legitimate. There are many workflows where that works well. But in some cases, we've had a lot of feedback where users have said, that's great, but there's some additional things I may need to do that really doing them in the field is not the most productive, efficient way to do that. So we're going to see some examples of that here. So we're in the CartoPac server environment, and now we're going to upload. So we're uploading the data that we just collected, the this particular project. Move through the wizard here, and that data is going to be merged into the target database or databases. In this case, a version within SDE, particular feature classes. So as I'm in the web map here, and I zoom in and that refreshes, I can now see the point for that inspection that I collected. That alone is a key piece, that visual verification that spatially that data I collected is where it should be. Now, I'm going to pause this real quick. This is where we move from the standard CartoPac server environment into CartoPac Asset Manager. Through the CAM interface here, I can now browse collected features. This gives me an interface to view all the data that's in my queue. So you'll notice here that the owner is field user 1. I only see my data. And I see some information about that, and I can further interact with that. In this case, I'm going to go to the Details tab. We'll come back to the Map tab in a moment. So now I have some additional interaction I could do. In this example, I'm actually going to attach my photo on the back end. Now, those of you familiar with CartoPac know we can capture photos in the field with an integrated camera, and that comes back with the data. In this case, though, perhaps we used an external camera. I've loaded that up onto my machine, and I want to attach that. So I can actually attach a photo here through CAM. Key point, this can be other supporting documentation attachments. So think of an X-ray inspection, a welder certificate, whatever it might be that's key to this particular workflow, I can add supporting documentation here. Now, in addition, another key response we get is, hey, you know, it's difficult to enter data on that little soft keypad on my little handheld GPS. Maybe it's, you know, raining outside, hailing outside. For whatever reason, a lot of times it makes sense to enter that data on the back end. So a comments field like you've seen here. Now this is a new piece here with the CartoPac Asset Manager, are these processing notes. So as a field user, I've uploaded my data, I'm interacting with it, but I may want to add some additional notes here that will go along with this particular state and will live with this particular feature throughout all of the states. So that may make more sense here in a moment. I'm going to pause this here as well. As you can see, before we jump in here to the submission here, I wanted to touch on the state. Currently, we're in the uploaded state, right? Data came back from the field, we uploaded it, and it's in that uploaded state. As a field user, I went in and I did some additional work. I attached a photo, filled out some comments, added a processing note, and now I'm done. I'm ready to submit. So the submit is the actual transition. And as I click on Change Record State, I'm now going to move this into the next state. Now, the current state is now in damage detected. So I've moved it from one state to the next. And in this case, based on how we've set up this workflow, because damage is detected, it's gone into another queue, and I cannot change the state for this feature. So there's some validation going on here behind the scenes. So as I go on to complete my work, I may go back. I may want to also look at my data one more time from the map view. Or I can come in here and just check the state was changed, and we can see that this was an automated system transition to check for damage. As I go into the map, I have that spatial verification, the locational awareness on the left, and I have some attribution here. But again, damage was observed, and so now I'm locked out of this particular feature. Okay? Again, all very configurable, users, permissions, what we can see, what we can do. All right. Field user is done from this point, right? We've submitted that data. It's moved from one state to the next. The field supervisor has now been notified, or perhaps just going through their standard process. This data is now in their queue, right? So our job now is to review that field inspection, or the inspections coming in from multiple users in my single portal. There may be additional interaction and processing that I need to do, and then I may need to submit that data for the next step in the process. Quick review from their perspective: needs to be an efficient interface, the ability to perhaps perform some additional work, edit, analysis, and move that data to the next step. All right, so now we are logged in as the manager, in this case Manager 1. Same interface to browse collected features that all the users would have. But in this case, we can see I have additional data here in front of me. I've got additional rows because I actually have, and I'm just going to pause that real quick. If you look over here under the owner, there's field user 2 and field user 1. So again, we can really get as granular as we want for what the field user, what an individual user can see here. Now you can also note that I changed via a filter to only see damage detected. So within our browse features capability, we can filter the data. It can be filtered by merge date, but as you can see, it can be filtered on these columns. So I only want to see the damage detected components here in my browse features dialog. So let's say I'm starting in the map. I'm going to go do my first review, and I can see that the data is on the pipeline where I would expect it to be. But I can also see here some of the attribution, and you can see that I have access to some of the attributes, both viewability and editability here. So I can see that they noticed a gouge, put that into the comments, and they've stated there's a repair required. But you know what? I'm going to view the details here just to make sure, so some validation here. And I've got the photo that the field user brought in here, and I can go and interact with any of that supporting documentation. And for the purposes of demonstration, let's say that this pipe, yeah, we see there's a little damage, but you know what? There's not a repair required. Whether that's a valid statement or not, again, forgive me, for the purposes of demonstration, we're saying no repair required. So I'm going to add my own processing note. Again, now I'm the field supervisor, but you can see the field personnel, they have their processing note there as well. So we've got an additional tracking piece here for any of these processing notes as they move step by step through the system that can be very useful in the overall process. All right, we've successfully done that. Now we may want to interact with the data, and in this case we'll enter something in the description field. Again, maybe not really where it would go, but for the purposes of demonstration, perhaps I want to enter some additional data into an attribute on the record itself. And all very configurable based on your particular needs. The key piece here that we want to show next is now that we've done a processing note, we've reviewed some of that data, is that we can review this history. All right, so we have a state history here. You can see highlighted now was the first state. It was uploaded by the field user. It then moved into the check for damage state. All right, and that was a manual move by the field user to submit that into the check for damage. Now, it automatically, again, automatic evaluation based on an attribute criteria, moved into the damage detected state. Now, as the field supervisor, I haven't yet submitted this, and you can see I may have a different set of actions or transitions available to me than the field user did. I'm going to say repair not required, submit that. And now, if we go back down, we can see there's an additional state here because I've sent it to the confirm no repair state. So we've got an audit trail here as well. All right. Now, as the field supervisor, perhaps I'm moving on to my next set of responsibilities, my next bit of work. And I can go back to my browse features, and I can see that that state has changed. And if I were to filter this, right now, I have no more damage detected records. So perhaps I'm done here with that particular workflow. All right, so we've moved data through several states. All right, and again, a fairly simplistic view compared to, in reality, what some of the QA/QC processes that you may need to have in place. We've moved it from the field uploaded it, submitted it, and went through some review, exception, rejection, QA/QC type of processes. But finally, we want to show you some of the admin components, again, to get under the hood and show you how some of these pieces fit together. So again, that ability to be able to configure your users, your roles, and your permissions to match these different workflows and use these different states and transitions to bring this all together. Now keep in mind, we're leveraging existing systems, so users may be based on your Active Directory, Again, we can leverage that single sign-on type of environment, Windows Integrated Authentication, or it could be a forms-based authentication. Again, a lot of detail we won't get into here today. Again, the configuration of at the attribute level and the feature level, what can we view, what can we edit? These are some of the key pieces here that we'll look at here within the administration. So again, review needs to be configurable, rapidly design, deploy, and modify these, right? This may change. We may have to add new workflows. We want to be able to leverage our existing IT architecture. So for example, again, I mentioned leveraging Active Directory and leveraging our existing systems. This is built into GIS, leveraging our ArcGIS for server environment, leveraging SDE. And we'll see that here. Looks like my video got ahead of me. Let's back up. So we're going to log in, and in the demonstration we have here, we're actually using forms-based authentication. Typically that would be a single sign-on process. So you can see we've got some additional menu, or an additional menu for admin, since we're logged in as administrator. And we're going to start there in the Map and Esri Service Administration window. And we can see here we've got some feature services configured, and this is where we could go in and for this particular service feature, determine which attributes are visible and or editable. A lot of attributes here. We don't necessarily need all of those for our particular use for any given user, right? So we can set this up for specific attributes to be visible and or editable. Okay. Once we've set that up, we could also look here at the user management view. So within user management, we can see we have our users. You may recognize some of them from the demonstration here, field user 1, manager 1. We didn't really interact with the operations additional tier there. We have our different roles, and we have our different permissions. So you can see up top there's a number of different permissions we can interact with. And again, purposes of time, I know we're screaming through a lot of this here, but hopefully giving you an idea of the interface and the capabilities here. So whether we're adding new permissions, editing permissions, and whether that sits at a granular level for a user, for a particular group or role. Now we'll get into the actual CAM components, right? The states, we can determine all of these different states that we want. But really what we want to do is get into the workflow, because this is where we'll tie it all together with the different transitions. So I'm going to pause this right here. So looking back and thinking back to the demonstration we just went through here, we really focused a lot of it on this automated attribute criteria transition in the check for damage, right? So we can go in and we can look here at the this particular transition, and we can see that we have a name, a from state that we can utilize, a to state we can utilize, and then the logic behind that, which is key here, right? This attribute criteria, looking at that damage observed attribute here. Now you can see below some of the manual transitions, the submit that the field user used, the send to repair review that the field supervisor used in this case, right? And again, from states and to states. So this concept of states and transitions within a workflow, tying that together with different users, roles, permissions, and then tying that with the viewability and editability of different features, which can be grouped or individual as well. Now, one thing we didn't really talk about here today are some of the geoprocess or other states that we could have in place. So you see here in the screen the post-processing transition. So that can be an automated state where when data is ready to be post-processed, differential correction from GPS perspective, that it automatically would then go into that state. A number of other geoprocess capabilities that could be introduced here would be different triggers. For example, some type of Python script, additional GIS analysis or other capabilities, and then items like we'll talk about here in a few weeks where data is now ready to load to pods. You can see that transition here, the send to pods transition. We didn't touch on that here today, but we'll be talking about that more with our co-presentation, New Century Software, here in a few weeks. A lot to go through here in a webinar. Again, a lot of detail that we probably didn't cover, so we do invite you to ask any specific questions, of course, and we can always interact with you one-on-one as well after the fact. Hopefully, though, that gives you a good idea of CartoPac Asset Manager, at least at a high level, and some of the capabilities available here. Some of the items that we didn't really talk about or touch on or see in the demonstration, I maybe mentioned notifications. So that can be a key piece here within CAM. For example, the data moves from one state to the next. It's now in the field supervisor's queue. A notification perhaps on high priority assets, an email is generated. Coming up in future release, and we're moving through our release process pretty rapidly here, would be more of a graphical configuration of these workflows. So you saw how it's set up here today in that administration page. We're moving towards more of a graphical presentation. Again, think of that flowchart concept of drag and drop states and transitions that will give you the ability to really rapidly configure. Now, we also talked about some of these other integration points, and that's an area where we will continue to develop and grow the application for CartoPac Asset Manager. You know, we talked about the pods integration points. We talked about some of these geo processes. Coming down the road will be integration points with EAM systems such as Maximo and SAP. So this really is setting the foundation for a system, again, this complete platform, to be able to tie in even further and leverage additional capabilities within your current environment. All right, well, quick summary of some of what we've talked about here today. Again, CartoPac Asset Manager, we just looked at some of the configuration environment. We want to ensure it's a configurable tool to really set up and address the different review, approval, rejection, this QA/QC process, right? This further extends this complete platform, the CartoPac platform concept, if you will, again, going a step further beyond seamless field data collection and upload, download into your enterprise systems, adding additional structured process. We do all this because, again, CartoPac is a specialist in field asset management. We work very closely with our partners to, work tightly in a broader concept, leveraging the Esri technology stack, working with other vendors on the pod side, such as New Century. But CartoPac specializes and therefore brings a lot of expertise around this concept of field asset management. And hopefully you're getting a sense of that here with what we've brought to market in the CartoPac Asset Manager. So we've got about 10 minutes left. Hopefully we've got some time to answer some questions. I'm going to kick this back over to Sam so he can moderate and announce these questions as they've come in, and we'll do our best to answer them. Sam?
All right, thanks, Jake. All right, we've got a few questions here. I'll touch on the first one. Can it also be used for asset inventory, and what would that look like?
Okay, right. Now that's a very good question, and I realize in today's demonstration we kind of focused in on this inspection and maintenance type of concept. But yes, absolutely this could be applied to an inventory type of workflow. And in fact, many of our current clients, that's really more akin to some of the work they're doing today, are asset inventory type of workflows. In some discussions I've had with some peers in the industry where they feel this could be applied along those lines, if you think of a construction project, as-built, data coming in, and I think I may have even mentioned it before in the demonstration where some of the supporting documentation that could be attached, such as an X-ray inspection, a weld inspection. So some of these concepts as well, but the same type of workflows, or let me rephrase that, the specific workflows that you need within your organization that address this review QA/QC process, whether it be asset inventory, inspections, some type of maintenance workflow, whatever that workflow may be, if data is coming in from the field and there needs to be a structured process, the goal is the CartoPac Asset Manager can address that. Because again, it's very configurable that you can apply your states and your transitions as simple, as robust, as general, or as granular as you need. So yes, we definitely see this being applied both to asset inventory and more of the inspection and maintenance workflow as well.
All right, next question is, does CAM work with a non-Esri solution, i.e. SQL Server Spatial?
Okay, great question. Now, those of you who have been with us for a while may be aware that CartoPac, the technology as a whole, is very database friendly, right? So it does work at the database level. The first version of CartoPac Asset Manager, I believe, is Esri specific. Now, CartoPac Server, CartoPac in general, as many of you may know, can interact with a non-Esri database, and there are things we can do today, even within CartoPac Asset Manager, to have touch points with other non-Esri environments. This is something I may need to double check on to give you an accurate answer. So please, if whoever asked that question, if you wouldn't mind following up with me, shoot me an email, because I'll try to get a more detailed response here. But I believe that in the first version, as it sits today, there may be some Esri dependencies, but to what extent and to what extent we'll broaden that offering, I'll have to get some more details for you. So I apologize, I don't have a real firm answer for you on that. But again, if you shoot me an email, and I'll have my contact info up here in a moment, I'll get you a detailed answer on that.
All right, one more. We have an existing QA/QC process. How can this interface with it?
That's a really good question. So at a high level, again, the goal here is that because the way CartoPac is set up, CartoPac Asset Manager is set up through these configuration tools, that you could apply your existing QA/QC process into the workflow through the configuration that CartoPac Asset Manager provides. Now, with that being said, that's all fine and good really at a high level. But you may have existing QA/QC processes that aren't broke, that do a specific job very well. For example, you may have some very specific geospatial component of review, some analysis, some geoprocessing. Now, the goal with having the geoprocess state, these bubbles, and with some of the things that we're offering to extend the CartoPac Asset Manager, for example, to be able to move it into a state that triggers a Python script. So let's say, for example, you have some existing workflows in GIS where as data comes in, you perform a buffer on this point feature, which then needs to run an analysis against a wetland polygon, or whatever the geoprocessing you could come up with might be. If that were in an existing model via Python script, the ability to apply a state, perhaps automated, and again, a lot of this is going to come back to attribute criteria, right? So let's say a particular attribute criteria is met, it moves into a state, it fires off a geoprocess. So that's one example. The goal here would be that either you're able to apply your process wholeheartedly through CAM, or if you have existing processes and tools, that CAM gives a foundational, flexible platform from which you could fire off other events and other triggers so that they're working very cohesively hand in hand. And as I mentioned before, if you've got processes that ain't broke, well, we want to try to bring that in versus replacing completely. Hopefully that gets to the crux of your question. I'm not sure if it does. If there's follow-up needed, please feel free to enter that.
All right. Well, those were the 3 questions. I think that's a testament to your thoroughness, Jake. Thanks.
Well, hopefully this was a good overview. Again, in an hour's worth of time, I know we breezed through quite a bit here. Again, I invite all of you to not only attend our upcoming webinars in different topics, but if you have questions or specific areas of CAM that we didn't cover that may really address some key components for your responsibilities, your job, your organization, we're always happy to schedule time one-on-one. We can do one-on-one web meetings, or if we're in your area, of course, face-to-face. So by all means, please do stay in touch. We really want to thank you for your attendance here today. Taking time out of your day, it does mean a lot to us. We realize how busy everyone is. So taking a little bit of time to spend with us today, again, much appreciated. My contact information is up on screen. You can also get a hold of us at sales@cartopac.com is a simple one to remember if you don't want to write that down. And again, thank you very much. I'll leave you here with a view of the upcoming webinars. Hopefully, if you haven't registered yet, you'll be able to join us for some or all of these. And as we mentioned before, this webinar has been recorded, and we will make this available so that you can view it again and or pass this along to others that may benefit as well. With that, wish you a good day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jake. And just a reminder to all, you can access the recording of this webinar through the same registration link that you used to sign up today. Thanks again for coming, and we hope to see you again soon.